Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. This is Dr. Fresh Hour here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a video covering stretching and mobility. And this won't be like an all-inclusive video or anything like that. It's just going to be a few of my opinions on the matter. And so, yeah, first and foremost, check out my website, startfreshmd.com. As I stated in my last video, I will be updating these plans. So they're going to be switching to more of an hourly rate depending upon the service. So for the people that are actually into the $1,600 plan, I talk to them a lot more than I'm probably supposed to. So it's a pretty good deal. But I know for some people, $100 or $60 outright a month is a little bit too much, and they have a better time considering paying hourly. So, as always, you can go onto my videos, and here's my latest video log, my latest live stream, my YouTube channel here, and just, I put up some random ones of these. These aren't all of them by any means. Okay, so, as always, I like Healthline because they're pretty reliable. They are definitely a pretty reliable source. But you just have to know what you're wading through. So what are the benefits of stretching? Obviously, decreased injury risk. However, that's more for increased mobility. Athletic performance, focusing on dynamic stretches. Okay, there you go. So that'd be more mobility and not flexibility, which we'll talk about. Improved circulation, great. Range of motion, great. Less pain, great. Okay, when to stretch. So static, at least 15 seconds. Dynamic involves moving. You just have to think about that. So static stretching, they always like to think about it as like a cool down. So anytime you're warming up, you want to warm up moving. Anytime you're cooling down, you want to cool down by, not moving. That's how my brain works. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. And I think there's like a more of a parasympathetic hormonal response with static stretching versus dynamic stretching, since this is like a relaxing rest digest state, and this is more of a fight or flight sympathetic state. But I look at it very simple. You want to move to move. If you want to not move after you moved, don't move as much by doing more like static stretching. And that doesn't necessarily include yoga. Yoga is more up here. There's a lot of different types of yoga, obviously. And I know a lot of yogis get offended whenever you just call it stretching. Yoga is really difficult, especially certain types. So yeah, before dynamic stretching, after static is not a bad way to go about it. I really just don't like static stretching that much because I don't really like sitting still that long. This is usually as long as I sit still, like in a day when I make one of these. So here we go, full body stretching routine. I'm gonna give you a little example of what I would want to do once we get down here a little bit. So yeah, like this is a calf stretch that would obviously do a little bit of the hamstrings. I'm sure I want to see a lot of people doing leg swings all day long. Hamstring stretches, quadricep stretch. You guys have probably seen a lot of these. This is actually a really nice one. And you can do this with a ball, like a tennis ball, a baseball, or a not less, what is that called? Racquetball? No, the sport where they run around like they wanted to play football, but they were too rich, so they had to play in a grass field with goalies, like hockey. They weren't rich enough to play hockey, so they played it. Lacrosse! That's what it is, lacrosse ball. Just make sure you avoid your sciatic nerve. A lot of people stretch around this area and they're just blasting their sciatic nerve, and they're like, man, I really feel that burn. And it's like, yeah, you're right. You are feeling a burn. Okay, so anyway, I wouldn't really listen to when you perform these. Like, I'll give you something to do that's a lot more effective. This is cool. If you have a super arthritic spine and you're not used to moving on it, don't snap it, please. Chest stretch. This one's really difficult because you need your shoulders to be back and down when you do this. And the reason why I'm saying that is, so let me make sure my video's got this. Okay. So when your shoulder is back and down, you're opening up your entire front of your shoulder capsule, and that makes a lot of room. Most people don't have shoulder pain in the back. They have shoulder pain up front, right? So if my shoulder's here up front and I'm doing that, now I'm just if you want to think about leverage and levers, and that's just kind of how my brain goes to it, right? Whenever I'm backing down, I have more space here. So that way, whenever I'm forcing my body forward and basically removing space up here, I've created enough room for this stretch to take place and these ligaments and tendons to move freely. Whereas if I'm here and I do that, it's like, if you want to know a better example of this, try it. Put your arm on something like you normally would. Then think about going back and down with your shoulder and letting your scapula go underneath where it's supposed to be, because your scapula is more of like a shelf kind of thing that stuff sits on. It should move around a lot, really freely. But anyway, by having your scapula be back and down, shoulders back and down, and you create that room, when you do this chest stretch, you'll actually feel it in your chest and your shoulder won't feel like it's about to explode. Neck circles are those are okay. I mean, in reality, I'm terrible at this too, but you want your head to be more in this position to where it's actually sitting on top of your skeleton rather than this position, So if you're in this position and you do neck circles, very different than if you're in this position and you do neck circles. If you're doing neck circles with bad posture, you're just you're just making matters worse, in my opinion. But if you get here, in reality, if she were to just scoot that chair all the way back to the wall and then push her head and try and take her chin through her neck, much better stretch. The bottom line, thank you. Okay, so here's another one that's pretty interesting. I was just kind of going through it, and I love elderly recommendations. First off, like, nobody likes to be called elderly. If you are, you are. I think it's more of a state of mind. A 60-year-old could be considered elderly if they look the part and move the part, right? There's 80-year-olds that can deadlift more than me. I wouldn't necessarily consider them elderly, because elderly is almost just like a state of physical being and your ability to navigate space freely and efficiently, kind of, So anyway, seniors should stretch muscle groups for at least 10 minutes, 2 days a week. Seniors should be moving all the time. You guys are like all retired, so you should just not moving. Let's get that out of the way right now. Flexibility exercises on all days that cardiovascular resistance training exercise occurs. You guys should be resistance training like every single day. You should be trying to hold on to every bit of muscle. You should be doing the most posturally sound exercises that you could possibly imagine, joint friendly. Like, for instance, like instead of just screwing around with lunges, just do reverse lunges, way easier on you. Instead of doing a barbell squat, do a belt squat in the belt squat machine, because it's almost as good as an actual squat, but you don't have any risk of falling around and having to hit your little button on your necklace. I don't even know if this is still a thing. Do dumbbell exercises instead of barbell. Like, there's a lot of different ways you could approach this, but I promise I will be lifting every single day after I'm like 60 years old, instead of just like 2 or 3 days a week. Stretching tips. Don't really stretch until you're done. Use mobility. Move. Just move. And if you're retired and you're wealthy, get a sauna. And if you're not super wealthy and you're retired, just save up some of your check every month and then buy a sauna, a dry sauna. Extremely beneficial for decreasing all-cause mortality. And yeah, especially head posture with seniors is super important. The chest is okay, but in reality, it's all going to start here with your posture. So if you fix your shoulders and your head's still here, eventually you're going to hunchback of Notre Dame, right? So I'm going to show you guys my favorite exercises to do for this type of stuff. And your lower body, we can solve a lot of that with just a couple exercises. Not to like dump on personal trainers or anything like that, but their job is just trying to make you not be bored. And their job is to make you healthy and gain weight, like muscle, obviously, get you healthier. The more muscle you have, no matter what, the healthier you will be, as long as you do it naturally. And the diet required to gain muscle most of the time is a little healthier. Sure, you can throw a lot of calories at it, but you have to increase your protein intake, right? So if I just increase your protein intake and make you stronger, you'll gain more muscle. When you gain more muscle and you get stronger, your insulin sensitivity will improve. All of these other hormones kind of fall in line. You start sleeping better. Stress goes down because you're relieving it in the gym. But the real job is just to make you not be bored, make you find a way to make you enjoy it, what you're doing in there, right? It's not like rocket science. once you start getting into rep schemes and tempos and designing workouts that your body will continue to respond to, that gets a little trickier. But okay, 8 simple stretches to relieve lower back pain. The reason I linked this is because a lot of these are horrible. And some of these knee to chest stretches can put some serious strain on your lumbar spine. Trunk rotation, cat-cow's pretty good. Pelvic tilt, very good stretch to work on your fixing your anterior pelvic tilt. I just kind of was showing you guys this article because there's so many of them. Like, there's just endless articles about how to do this stuff. And I don't know. Oh no, get out of here. Get out of here. Oh, your ads. Your ads. Okay, stretches to do at work every day. So like, for everyone who's just like, man, you know, I sit down all day. I'm not saying you're gonna sit down all day and look like this lady. she's a little toned and she looks like she's what, in her 40s? She could be an early bloomer. She could be late 30s. I'd say this girl's probably in her 40s, had a little bit of work done. The nose looks fake. A little Photoshopage going on. Good lighting. Maybe even, oh yeah, sorry, I'm getting into lighting now because mine's terrible. But let's see, she's got a little in-toeing going on here. That could be aesthetic, or it could be she's a little pigeon-toed. So maybe she was a sprinter. She looks super athletic for her age. Pigeon-toed people are statistically faster. Fun fact. Pigeon-toed. So yeah, okay, so fun fact. This is not necessarily all a lat stretch. You have this muscle, and hang on. I want to figure out the best way to do this. So if I do quadratus lumborum, and then I go to images. This muscle, yeah, this will be a little simpler. Attaches to the top of your, okay, so here's your sacrum. So this is like, I'm looking anteriorly at it, right? Here's the sternum. So if I were to get a posterior view, I want a posterior view of this. There we go. Okay, so here's the back of it. Here's your spine, obviously, and your ribs, your little floaters. This top attaches to this part of your pelvis, right here. This little guy right there, and then it attaches its way along. And I know for some people, so like let's look in the medical literature. See, there's some attachments along the what is that, a transverse process or something? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then there's some along the floating ribs. So it's like everybody's attachment is a little different, right? But whenever you do this stretch, that muscle, oh my gosh, it is so, okay. This is gonna be a tangent. You guys are gonna get a little bit more than you wanted to get. Okay, so look, imagine if you are standing up. Let's see if I can find, okay, perfect. Nice, he must work out. So this muscle right here, right? If I have this muscle and it's tight, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna shift my pelvis up, right? If I shift my pelvis up on one side, it's gonna make one leg a little shorter than the other. And you might get something known as a leg length discrepancy. And a lot of people like to say they have that, just like they like to say they have a thyroid issue, just like they like to say they have all these other conditions they don't really have, which most cases are like these really hard to prove or no definitive test conditions, or they didn't get the definitive test, they just like to say that. But anyway, most people with leg length discrepancies have something similar to this, especially if you're an adult. If you're like a little kid, you don't really get tight muscles. So anyway, if this is tight, it lifts your pelvis up, right? And this leg could technically be a little bit shorter, and you have a little imbalance in your hip, right? So the fact that there's some people out there that go there in decades, the rest of their life, with a leg length discrepancy, which I'm just gonna let you know this right now, when your hips are tilted like that, it's gonna cause a lot of imbalances everywhere else, right? If you stand totally upright, but something is shifted to the side, something else has to shift this way, which leads, it's just, okay. All you have to do is this stretch. That would be a good way to start. Okay, let's slow down here. You can also do it laying on your back, and put something. You gotta be really careful. You're not really supposed to, while we're talking about this, you're not really supposed to foam roll from here to here. So your ribs and your pelvis are supporting the foam roller, but once you get to here, it's just your spine. So all those people that like to foam roll their entire back, Not necessarily a good idea. I would recommend using a tennis ball for each side of your, even if you're just doing your erectors. There's got to be a picture with erectors. These guys. Um, or maybe that's too deep. Anyway, the ones that run along your spine to keep you erect. Erectors. Weird. But anyway, like I was saying, okay, yeah. So there's nothing really to support it here. So if you want to stretch these muscles or foam roll or soft tissue work or however the heck you want to call it, use a tennis ball, or what you can do, you can even use a softball if you have a big butt like me sometimes and you need to get in there. Or you can take two balls and tape them together or put them in a sock if you really don't want to tape them together, and then you can run them along both sides of your spine at the same time. Sorry, that was a big tangent, but that muscle is super, super freaking cool, and the fact that it leads to different leg length discrepancies is hilarious. Like, imagine this just pulls up. Okay, your leg is now shorter, and chiros are going to go in there and try to pop you around. Very few of them actually stretch this muscle or have any idea how to stretch the muscle. And there's a ton of them. Just remember, it's called the quadratus lumborum. Super simple muscle to stretch, extremely painful sometimes in the beginning, but yes. Next, cool. This is just opening up your chest. Great. We all do a lot of, we'll do that. We cover that. So one approach that I like to take, you're probably going to wonder why I only have a couple exercises to stretch with every day. It's because a lot of the other muscles, everything kind of falls in line after you work on this. I don't do a lot of rotation stuff. I don't want to mess with somebody. I think you should do rotation on your own and experiment, because you're like, you know yourself in space better than I do. And when I say in space, I mean that's like a proprioceptive term. Like, I know that my hand is above my face. That's like the proprioception in my brain. I'm knowing where it is, right? If I close my eyes, I don't know where it is. I don't really have very proprioception, which is just a certain part on your spine. Anyway, knee to chest, this is an okay stretch. It's just, there's been a lot of people that I really listen to a lot that say that this can put quite a bit of strain on your lumbar spine. I'm totally fine with bouncing on stretches. I don't think you should bounce like you're trying to rip yourself in half, but you're using the elasticity in your muscles and joints to kind of help get yourself up too. So if you can't do a complete control down and up, I don't really think bouncing's a bad idea, as long as you're just not going crazy. Head and shoulder stretches, cool. Better idea for this, if you can look at yourself in a mirror, I'm super asymmetrical because I pitched with this hand and didn't do anything, or shoulder, and didn't do anything with this shoulder, right? Super interesting. I have to work on so many asymmetries, which we're never going to be perfect, right? But it's a good idea to try to be more symmetrical, because when you're lifting, just like how the hips were off and the rest of the body was off, when you're lifting and you're off or something, then like then everything else, it's the exact same principle as when the hips are off, because when you go up, there's all this compensation, right? My shoulders are off. My base, when I'm doing a standing shoulder press, is trying to stay level and rigid, right? So there's going to be almost like shearing forces, since stuff isn't stacked on top of each other. And shearing forces is a kind of a joint term. I'm sure it's a term for a lot of things other than medicine. I just don't know it. Maybe like building a builder. Yes. So the upper trap stretch, super duper cool. If you want to make this a little more, less of just your big trapezius muscle, which is like a diamond in your back, if you put this hand underneath your butt and scoop your shoulder down really hard, then you can really get in there and stretch those scalenes and stuff. So cool. Anyway, so here's where we're going to talk about this. Active stretching is the static stretching you haven't tried yet. I don't like the fact that Daniel Priodo decided to think that I didn't know that, but anyway, Daniel, it's 2021? I thought this would be an older article. Man, I hope you guys know what active stretching is. Cool. Daniel, that's a bold claim, man. That's a really bold claim. So these involve the lengthening. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Flexibility is defined as the ability of a muscle or muscle group to lengthen passively through the range of motion. So like, So if I'm gonna go like this, ow. Okay, it's easier for me to take this side to this side, and no, it's not because I'm on the phone like this all the time. That probably has a lot to do with it, I'm sure there's way more. Well, let's just say that. I'm on the phone like this a lot, right? So passively, I can go down really far. And I can go down all the way there. That's flexibility. Going this way and this way, mobility. Mobility is whenever you are actively, like your brain is controlling it, right? And I know there's just like some snarky people out there like, but your brain is controlling it. Just imagine if somebody else was moving my hand or something, or not moving my hand, that's mind control. If somebody else was moving my head with their hands, that flexibility, passive. Let's say I knock you out and I run you through some exercises, as weird as that sounds, or some stretches. That's passive flexibility. Which, fun fact, if you like put some people under general like anesthesia, most of them can do the splits. One of my attendings told me that. So I'm just going to take his word for it because I didn't really feel like there was, I thought I might cross some ethical lines if I were to, sorry, it's kind of early to be like all morbid and weird. Maybe that's just me. So anyway, here is my first exercise for my morning routine that I want everybody to get into doing. It's called the Slav squat, or the third world squat. Despite some people thinking that that's offensive, when in reality, their posture and hips and ankles are so much better than ours. I feel like it should be almost an insult. They don't call it the first world squat, So for those of you who have ever seen a child before in your life, I'm sure you've seen them sit like this. I'm sure you've seen people in third world countries sit like this. This is supposed to be how we rested, or pooped, or gave birth, even. I know, crazy. So the fact that I'll go out on a limb and say, if you don't exercise fairly regularly, almost none of you over the age of, let's say 35, 40, could sit like this with your feet flat on the floor, all the way down. They call it an A to G, or butt to grass squat, right? I'm sure his thoracic spine, his pelvis is probably a little tucked under because kids' joints can just do crazy things. He's upright, just chilling, having a great day. His tibia has retracted, which we'll talk about in a minute. I guarantee if you don't exercise regularly, and you're over the age of like 35 years old, maybe, unless you did it a ton back in the day, you can't do that. And that is something that every single person should be able to do until they die. If you get up, find a pole, a broomstick, a chair, something sturdy, lower yourself down, try to get your feet flat, and you can have your knees out more, because depending upon how deep your femur sits into your pelvis will basically be how narrow or wide of a stance that you need. And as long as your feet follow your knees, you are stacking these joints properly, and you will not have the shearing forces on your knees that would cause pain. You can have shearing forces in your hips and stuff, but as long as your knees track over your toes, you're good. And the only way that your knees should not track over your toes is if you're trying to break up some stuff. If physical therapists sometimes do stuff like that, and you can grind away at it, but that's a little bit more controlled. I can maybe give you an example. I could probably, if I don't forget it by the time I get over there. Okay, so here's number one. Third world squat, Slav squat. That's it for lower body, really. Actually, there's one more, but here you go. Why you should do the third world squat. Thank you, Mobility Guardian. Check that out. There's a link. Enjoy it. The next thing, ankle mobility. I know the feet people are going to say that the feet are the most important, and I get it, feet are super important, but the amount of pain that you have to go through to rehabilitate your feet to be open and not these like gross looking things that they are today, most people they don't like that. And if you want to break up all the cartilage and scar tissue, whatever you want to call it, the myofascial adhesions in your feet to make them fully functional, great. I would recommend doing some feet strengthening exercises like towel drills and stuff where you actually get to move your feet around and help restore your arch, because nobody should technically be flat-footed. And podiatrists make millions and billions and millions and millions of dollars telling people they have flat feet when they can actually fix them. And they just give them an orthotic. And that has always bothered me, that that's like 99% of their business. They do that and hang nails and grown toenails. And Like the vast majority of their job. I mean, I guess in medicine's the same way. I bet internists see like 90% or more preventable conditions, all related to obesity in some way, shape, or form, and their job could be replaced entirely by robots and algorithmic machines in 0 time. Same with surgeons, which is actually kind of cool to think about. But no, okay. So this exercise, this is the reason he's using the band. This is like doing the knee toe test thing, but this retracts the tibia. So if I go over here and I do tibia, and I want a lateral view. Lateral view. All right. This might work. So here's your tibia, here's your fibula, right? So whenever your knee or your ankle bends, if this comes up and bends, this actually does something called tibial retraction, where it slides back, right? So, where are you? So this is actually doing that for you. You use the band because some people's ankle mobility is so bad that they never really worked on it. They never sat in a squat. They always were taught, don't let your knees go in front of your toes because I played JV baseball, and all those terrible recommendations. You have to kind of retrain your body, and once you do that, your body likes to latch onto things that are more efficient, and so your body will realize, holy crap, it's like it's a movement pattern your body should know. It's just kind of forgot. So by doing that and running yourself through this exercise, you'll be training your body that that's how you're supposed to do it, and you won't actually always need that. You only need to do that, I don't know, a few weeks, and you'll notice a drastic improvement after you do it every single time, but then eventually you won't necessarily need to do it. It's not like you have to just do this stuff all the time. This is a more to get you to where you need to be exercise and not something to keep you where you're at. And here's another way to do this. If you don't want to do this on the floor, you basically just put yourself there and you just kind of start pushing your knee over your foot over and over again. And it works. Next up is the wall test. And I don't know who, thanks assessment person. In reality, you want to have about 5 inches. You want to be able to have your knee go about 5 inches over your foot, and that would be about all you would ever need to do. And unless you're a woman with estrogen, it's really joint friendly, you will need to work on this. But that would ensure adequate ankle mobility, and by sitting in this position, if you can sit in that position without putting your arms on your knees, with your feet flat on the floor for a minute, your hip mobility is pretty good and your strength there is good. So those are 2 lower body things: stretching your ankles out and stretching out your hips with that Slav squat. Because I know it seems like you're just sitting there, but if you remove your elbows from your knees, now it's a very active thing. Very difficult. Very difficult. Everybody can do it. You're not going to just fall apart by sitting in a squat. You might fall on your back and you roll over and then you kind of do that help me get up thing, The next thing, this is Athlean-X. Jeff Cavaliere is a very great personal trainer. I think he's a physical therapist. He's really smart. I learned a lot from him, a lot. Here is the only upper body like stretching mobility thing that I would recommend, and you can probably isometrically do this if you wanted to. Yeah, almost like a TRX type thing, but just resistant bands of any kind. And here's the movement. You're pulling, and I know this seems really weird, but keeping this line pulling towards your face, keeping your elbows below your shoulder, so that way you really engage not only just your posterior delt and your trap, but you're also getting, the posterior rotator cuff involved. All of these muscles are your postural muscles. So when guys go to the gym these days, we'll just let this play because dude's ripped and it's cool. Whenever you are sitting this way, it's not because these muscles are tight in your chest, right? These muscles are really tight, but these muscles are also like nice and loose and just like they're atrophied to the point that these muscles are just always constantly elongated. These muscles are super, super tight. And so one thing that a lot of people like to do, let me just try to get to my point in my brain somewhere, is open up your chest. And so they just want to stretch and yank and yank and yank and try to pull these muscles tight or looser, right? They're ripping these muscles loose. And then these muscles, they're like, when someone else is pulling on it, they're not actually posturally doing what they're supposed to do, right? So what I'm trying to say is when you do this exercise, you will be opening up your chest and tightening all of the muscles that hold you here. You know, rather than grandma telling you, shoulders up, sit up straight, blah, 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 blah. If you just do something like this, you can do this every single day. You can load this up as much as you want. You can do it with 20 or 30 pounds. You can do it with little bands. Do this one exercise, you can do this almost all the time. Keeping your thumbs back, trying to lead with your wrists, even though it's basically impossible. Keeping your elbows below your shoulder, because that way will actually involve the muscles that we want to involve and not put too much pressure on the shoulder. This is amazing. It's an amazing postural exercise. And the only thing that I will add on to this is this. You can do this with a band. You can do this any way you want. It's a version of a pullover. See, imagine if he was laying on his back, pulling over. So it's called a pull down, a straight arm pull down. And this works straight arm, scapular, which is your shoulder blade, strength. That's it. I would tell people, wake up, sit in this squat. Once you sit in this squat, work on your ankles. See, push your freaking knee over your foot a little bit. And you know what? Most of the people that listen to this are probably gonna need to do it for a while, right? There's all these different ways to do it. Test it on the wall. Get a little band for like $1 on Amazon and do face pulls, and you will feel a humongous, massive difference. And in a few weeks, you'll be sitting up straight and more posturally sound. Then, once you do the face pulls, you just do this. You don't have to do it on your knees either. You can do it standing. This is just a very convenient gift. So that's it. And you notice how I worked this muscles in the back, these muscles, and then I work the front, right? But in reality, rather than stretching your calves all the time, I'm actually going to encourage proper mobility. And then you sit in a squat, and it's like, wow, I don't feel like I really stretched all that much. Do those 4 things, and then tell me what's tight. Do it. I dare you, right? So anyway, that is my little rant on stretching and mobility and morning routines and how to approach it. It's one of those things where it's so simple and there's so many ways to do it, but there's so few things you actually need to do whenever you just look at the body and you see what it's supposed to do. Like we squat, we bend over, so we deadlift, right? We walk, so we lunge. We do single leg work when nobody does single leg work. Our arms, our shoulder, you know, the most mobile joint in our body, can push from pushing down, right, all the way up. So we have like a horizontalish press, a vertical press. Then we can pull. Great. Then there's twist, whatever. But once you break it down into that, obviously the most important thing is usually from the back of your head to your heels. That's like the most neglected, and the posterior chain is stronger than the anterior chain. A lot of people like to talk about how much they bench, but not how much they row. A lot of idiots talk about how much they deadlift, and I'm sure that's great. You know, I'm sure you probably pull sumo because it's more anatomically favorable for most people, unless you're like half Thor or something like that. Great. I don't really care how much you deadlift because you're most likely super unathletic, and that's just a power. I'm sorry, that's a powerlifter rant. Some of those people are just like, how much do you deadlift, bro? And it drives me nuts. Powerlifters are super cool. Some of them are just, yeah, I know. I don't have a very great deadlift because I pulled my erectors a few times. Thanks, overweight patient trying to go onto the gurney. Okay, that's too much of a rant. Might have to take that out. I should probably leave it in. I'll leave it in. But yeah, here's my website, startfreshmd.com. This is Dr. Fresh Hour, Fresh Start. I'm signing off right now before this rant continues. And my coffee kicks in a little bit. Believe it or not, it goes more than this. Yeah, so have a great day, happy weekend, and I will see you guys soon.